Let's dive deeper into the Pacers post-draft offseason. Much more detailed look at Myles Turner's free agency, what the Pacers need to consider with keeping him. We talk about all sorts of other players and every consideration the Pacers have with Yossi Gozlan from the Third Apron on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy weekend /Saturday/Sunday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, deeper dive into everything. Myles Turner's free agency. What do you need to know about the numbers, the considerations, why the Pacers need to look at this and that, and why my guest and I both think he'll be back with the team. Isaiah Jackson, Bennedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, the numbers of it all, what the Pacers have to consider in their new reality, and so much more, including at the very end, actual free agency targets. How about that? Yossi Gozlan, my favorite by far, public space cap guy, and I talk about it all today. We dive into the nitty gritty of the Pacers offseason, especially now that the draft's done. A lot easier to get into this stuff with the Pacers' needs and financial situation even more clear. Great conversation today. Let's just get right to it. Goodbye to the draft. Hello to free agency. Whew. And what was supposed to be a very straightforward and easy and obvious year for the Pacers has become decidedly not that after their Game 7 of the NBA Finals injury to Tyrese Haliburton. So much to get to with their offseason, with Myles Turner at the center of it, other key players who could be a part of it. And joining me to do that, the best there is in the cap world. This is not a joke anymore because too many other ones are wrong. The only cap site that I use to check my own work now, Yossi Gozlan from the Third Apron, one of my favorite Substacks, is here. He wrote about the Pacers offseason better than anyone else could a few weeks ago. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad, and I take it as a compliment when people use my stuff to double check their cap sheet. So I'm glad. I'm that now.
I don't know how what you would use for double checking or anything like that, but it's always stuff like, wait, is this how the cap holds work for these kind of weird contracts or stuff like that? And I'm like, Yossi would know for sure. That's the best. It's the best. Capsheets.com for those unaware. Okay. This was, like I said, supposed to be so straightforward. Good team, consecutive conference finals, one game from a championship. Keep Turner, go over the tax, maybe stop at that 11.4 million over so the multiplier stays below 3.5. Easy peasy. Dust your hands off, move on if you're the Pacers. Oh, no Tyrese Haliburton next year. Are they a team that should pay the tax? How do they prioritize the year after next year now? Who should they keep? So many dynamics have changed. And yet, as you and I talked about on your salary cast for their offseason, I still think that keeping Myles Turner should be, as Rick Carlisle has since said, the number one priority for the team, and they should figure out the rest of their situation after that. We can get into the reasons for why, and I've touched on them a little bit, but do you agree with that, and how would you handle his free agency, which is at the center of everything they're going to do this summer?
I don't think Tyrese Haliburton's injury should affect that. Just re-sign him. We just saw Naz Reid last night go for 5 for 125. I was about to say 1 for 125.
1 for 125. Woo! Did you see, by the way, that the old contract that got the 2004 CBA going was Kevin Garnett with the Wolves signing 6 for 125? How crazy the NBA has changed in 20 years.
Yeah, maybe we're 10 years away from 1 for 125.
Flag. Here you go, bud.
But yeah, Naz Reid getting $25 million a year. I think just more confirmation of what we feel is Myles Turner's market value, which should be around $30 million a year. I think they're going to bring him back on that contract. I think it's just about making sure the years are right, whatever that might be. So it's something that's favorable on their end, but also reasonable for Turner, fair for him. So I think they'll resign him. They'll exceed the tax. They can worry about getting it below it later if needed, if things are not going well. They'll have plenty of ways to do that. But they'll bring back Myles Turner. I would be pretty shocked if he's not re-signed with them.
That is also my feeling on this as well. And people saw the Naz Reid number and tried to spin it to whatever their opinion is of Turner right away. But to me, like, I don't know how you feel about Naz Reid, but he's a starting level center who just happens to be a backup on his specific team. And the Wolves paid him as such. I think Turner's a little bit better than him. And guess what? Turner should be paid a little bit more than him, right? Like, that seems extremely straightforward to me. And that range of like the non-star but good starting center. I mean, how many guys can we name here? Isaiah Hartenstein, Kristaps Porzingis, Jared Allen. There's a million of them that get somewhere between high 20s and low to mid 30s. And Myles Turner is exactly in that tier. In a summer that I'll be curious what you think about this. No team, I mean, I guess the Nets have the space in theory, although they just took in Terrence Mann and drafted 5 guys to have him. They have Nick Claxton on their team, right? So there's not actually someone with $30 million of spending power lying around unless the Pistons make some other moves here. So Myles Turner can't get his market value anywhere besides the Nets, and the Pacers can't get Myles Turner anywhere besides Myles Turner because they probably can't even use the non-tax. They can't even get close to a player of that caliber. So for those reasons, it makes sense. I'm curious who you think, if anybody, if it even matters, because to me it just makes so much sense that he'd be back, has air quotes leverage in this situation.
I don't think he needs any external leverage. I think you just like pretty much named the guys that you just going by comparison. They've had him for so long. I think they're gonna do right by him, and I think his lack of external leverage just maybe prevents him from getting more than whatever 30 million it is. Like maybe if there were a couple more cap space teams, they'd go for like 35 plus, make him like one of the highest paid non-max centers. But otherwise, I just think he's got enough internal leverage where he's gonna just get what he deserves.
I think so as well. The years are more interesting than the dollars to me, honestly. And you and I talked about that when we did this, because in theory, there's an argument that they could, if the tax was super, super important to them to avoid or keep it low at least, which their trade for the 38th pick certainly suggests that they're thinking about it, right? Cam Jones is almost certainly going to get a, 3 for 6, 4 for 9, second round exception cheapo deal, which is cheaper than a veteran's minimum, which is done with cap thinking in mind, right? The tax is certainly a thinking. And so the years is a way to keep the first year dollar amount down in theory. But do they want to go longer for a guy who will turn 30 next season? And, by the time he's being paid for the team to be a high level team again, will be 2 years from now. He'll turn 31 that season. Pascal Siakam's deal runs 3 more years beyond the technically ongoing, but ends in 2 days season. Haliburton's goes 4 more, right? How do they want to line him up? What makes the most sense? 2 years is like short and exciting, but that would be a higher first year value and it would never be extendable, which players hate as they reach their 30s. So I kind of feel like 3 years is the sweet spot because it lines it up with his core. 4 years makes sense if they want to keep the first year value down, but then they're fighting a lot on the back end of like, ooh, what are we doing if this doesn't work out? And we just saw Naz Reid get a player option, which I was like, wow, that is a doozy, right? The Pacers could offer that to keep the first year value down even more if they want to, but are they willing to do that, right? Those are the kind of things that I think are more interesting to me than the actual dollar amount, is how they try to structure it to make their salary cap reality make the most sense when they decide to do it.
Yeah, 3 years I think makes the most sense as far as like guaranteed portion. Just align him with Siakam. I think there's a couple other vets that are running up through the end of 2028. Then he'll be 32, going on 33. I think that's a good timeline. I think the value in making more years would be if you're going to either partially or non-guarantee it / add a team option. But then the other value is that the more years you put, the lower you can get you could maybe make the average salary. So there's a little bit of benefit in that. But so yeah, I think there's just a lot of other ways that this contract negotiation could go. But I think we're both pretty much around the same ballpark as far as like what the guaranteed portion would be. Probably like 3 years and then somewhere between 90 to 100 million, maybe a little closer to 90.
That is pretty much exactly what I've been saying for the last couple of months. Yes. Yeah. I was like with Naz Reid, like, why didn't like make that a partially guaranteed player option or something, right? Like that seems like too much player control, even though he obviously had a lot of leverage there, especially because like now they're probably going to lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We're not talking about the Timberwolves, but like I was very surprised by that. And I wonder with Turner, if they need to do that, could they do something like that to keep the first year salary down, do fourth year 40% guaranteed, but player option so that he gets more guaranteed money, but the Pacers are not like freaking out at that time that he's going to pick it up. Something like that always does make a lot of sense in these negotiations, if possible, but that is always part of this. Look, I've had to make this case a bunch, but there's a lot of Pacers fans who maybe aren't the biggest fan of Myles Turner. He did not play well in the finals. Can you, in your own words, explain why just letting him walk is like immensely stupid for them to do, even if he's being paid very handsomely to be a good player and people don't think he's worth the money? Like, it just, there's so many salary reasons why keeping him, even in that case, if you believe that, still makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the alternative is, let's say the Nets do want to re-sign him on a contract that they think would be tradable later, because that's probably be the only reason the Nets would go ahead and sign Myles Turner. Who are the Pacers replacing him with? Because if they let him go, they don't have any cap space. They'd only have the mid-level. The full mid-level, you can maybe get like a Brook Lopez, Clint Capella. Is that really where you want to go if you let Myles Turner go? Like, you'd have to then trade for another one. You might have to give up a bunch of assets. Like if the Pacers did have competition for Myles Turner and someone maybe even like did the Fred VanVleet like 2-year max type thing to really try to steal him from the Pacers, then I think if you're the Pacers, you want to try to trade for a big on a rookie contract. Like we saw the Suns just get Mark Williams. Maybe you trade some assets to get a Walker Kessler. Yes. But I don't think the Pacers are in a position where they really want to trade future draft picks right now because of the uncertainty with Tyrese Haliburton. So with all that considered, not a good outlook if they leave, if Myles Turner leaves. Not a lot of great options out there that wouldn't cost them an arm and a leg.
Wait, so you're saying it's better to have a good player and all your assets than lose a good player and lose some assets? That's crazy. Even if Turner is fairly or slightly overpaid, they're not going to have to get off his deal to be underwater. They would trade someone else. He's their third or fourth or whatever you think best player. There's just no good sense in letting him go, which is why previewing his free agency has been a little challenging for me, because to me, it's just like so obvious, right? And I think the Pacers have made it clear they feel that way with Rick Carlisle's comments, and Turner's outlook suggests that he should want to be back. And a lot of the reporting has suggested that, like, it makes so much sense for it to be a marriage that it's so hard for me to even talk about the alternative, because it makes no sense for like anyone, right? Like, unless Turner is desperate to be not in Indiana anymore. Outside of that, there's no reason that this shouldn't continue. And they can, and I always forget to explain this to people, mostly because it's brand new, but like they could do this like right now while we're talking, right? He, with the Pacers only, could sign a free agency deal like Siakam right now, right? So
they can announce it while we're recording this at the moment.
Yeah, every time I get a Twitter notification, I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be that. Well, it totally is.
Probably.
Yeah. So it could happen any second. I'll probably put this podcast up earlier than I normally do because of that exact reality, right? We're at that point of the offseason where the like slight financial infrastructure trades are happening, and, you know, re-signings have happened for a few guys already. So I'll be fascinated when this happens for Turner. But like I've said for weeks, and like we've talked about, my expectation is that he will be back at something close to that I've predicted to you. And in this podcast, 3 for 90, starting that at low as possible, 27.7. Can they keep themselves in the tax band they want to be? It's going to be close. It's going to be tight. It's going to be challenging. Let's move to the rest of their free agency. Do you think I'm correct, first of all, that Cam Jones will get something of the second round pick exception? Everybody does the 4-year, which makes the most sense. Yeah,
I looked into him. I like the theory of him, especially where the Pacers are now with Haliburton probably not expected to play next year. I would guess they're going to lock him up on a 4-year exception. What selection was he? 36, right?
38.
So the big difference with him is like he's definitely going to get a 3 or 4 year contract because he's, you know, not at the top of the second round, but like still kind of high. Do they maybe give him a bump above that pure minimum?
I think they will.
That way you can give him a 4-year deal. I'm still trying to get used to that rule.
Second round pick exception rule is not your favorite.
I'm still getting used to it. I don't think it's that big a deal. We're talking like $800,000 of cap flexibility to give him a little extra bump. So we'll see how that plays out.
I would think that they'd like to aim for a starting salary like 1.6, 1.5, something in that range. 4 for 7, maybe team option on the last year. So restricted free agency can be your friend at the end of that if he turns out to be awesome. But it's interesting for him because he'll be 26 by the end of a 3-year deal, like if his career actually pans out. So I guess some consideration with that because he's an older pick. Like they picked Furphy last year, 35th. Great. He gets a 4-year deal. He'll be 23 at the end. That's fine. Right? That's the kind of balance that they have to search through. I only bring that up because if we're both correct about Turner and Cam Jones gets about what we expect, they would still be well over the tax. Like not well over, like 7 million over with 3 roster spots still left to fill. And that's why their offseason becomes, how do they fill out the rest of the team? Is it just vet minimum centers, maybe a vet minimum point guard because of Haliburton's injuries? There's some other thing they want to do to shed money. And that's why when I did the high level offseason preview, I talked about some of those things. But what to you would be your priority? Would you think about shedding money now? Would you wait till midseason? How would you go about this? Everybody, quick break so we can talk about FanDuel. Summer sports in full swing. Whether you're all about the baseball under the lights, the golf on the green, the high-stakes soccer action, whatever it is, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Many people use FanDuel to track their favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions plus fun ways to bet. It's easy to use. You get fast payouts, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it seem like you're a part of the action. Perfect timing. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. How about that? Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Well, I would say, and this is just me, I don't think the Pacers view it this way. I don't think you view it this way. I would see if I can sell high on Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell. I know that's not a very popular opinion right now, but the discussion that we had is that, well, look, the Pacers realistically aren't going to contend for a championship this year. No guarantee that these two guys are going to play at this level again, especially for a playoff run. If you're kind of looking at a somewhat of a gap year, if you can get a lot of value for them, like premium first round pick value, that sort of thing, and potentially save some money, I think the Pacers should highly consider it. So that'd be number one. I wouldn't guess those offers are really out there to make it worthwhile for the Pacers. So then the next thing is,
well, hang on. I would say that if there's going to be premium value for those guys, it would be after the start of free agency if a team like missed on someone they wanted to fill that potential role. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So we have time. Yeah, I agree. So we'll have time to see about that. So then as far as building the rest of the roster, not a lot of great players available for the mid-level or really like above the minimum. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just mostly run it back, just add a couple minimum signings, get their stopgap point guard, get another backup center, and just stay. They'll be above the tax, but just stay like close enough where if things are not looking good, they're not looking like a playoff team as we get closer to the trade deadline. Okay, now it makes sense to not pay tax.
Yeah.
Maybe you're close enough where you can do a couple trades that won't cost you too many assets to get below it. Kind of like what the Sixers do every single year.
So the first thing is if Turner and Jones are on deals similar to what we've described, they are hard capped at the second apron because of their cash trade at the draft. So they're already out of using the full mid-level, right? Like they already don't even have that resource available because of the second apron. They'd be like 10 to 13 million away, depending on Turner's starting salary. So they're already out of that business anyway, right? And if they use a lot of it, then they can't fill the rest of their team. So they're probably realistically at like 7 million of it, right? They're really just at the tax level already anyway. So rule out that. And I have had to say this to everybody. Everybody's like, oh, can they apply for this disabled player exception for Haliburton? Yes, but it's the same problem. Like they can't realistically use like any or all of it because of the hard cap and because of how much that player would cost them in taxes. So that alone cuts down their options significantly to me, right? If not even with the tax in mind, just like they have a hard limit of spending now because of that trade, which is fine. I don't think they should be a second apron team anyway, but that is a consideration for them as they make these choices. So I, like you, would think that maybe they consider the sell high option, because the other part of this is like a season without Haliburton. A lot of these guys' values could just look worse by the end of the year because their numbers or shooting percentages might not look as good if the team's not quite as good. So how does that play into this? But yeah, Toppin is like last offseason. I talked about him a little bit as like a potential future guy that would have to explore because of his salary if they wanted to keep Turner. Like Mathurin's in that kind of salary band. Neesmith's in that band, but he's probably like a $20+ million player making $11 million. So you don't actually, air quote, save anything by moving him, even though, yes, in theory, he's in that sweet spot of like right about their distance from the tax. So the Mathurin, McConnell, Toppin trio would be the guys that you look at to talk about. But Mathurin's different in that, like, the guys you're talking about are veterans, and that's where the sell high element comes in, whereas Mathurin is young, and maybe they consider moving him for different reasons. They would be partially financial and partially fit. We'll talk about him more in a second, but yeah, that would be what I would do too, is try to put yourself in a position where getting out of the tax is reasonable, if not fairly easy. If things are not going well, you're like 500 at tax time, because look, obviously it's easy to, and everybody says, oh, the ownership should just pay the tax every year, make the team as good as possible. And like, there is like some kernel of truth to that. But if you are going to be picky as an owner about when you'll pay the tax, there is a repeater element to paying the tax. So it actually matters when you start paying the tax. And if the Pacers know because of this Tyrese Haliburton injury that they're going to be better 2 years from now than this year, it actually does make sense to start that clock at certain time, that repeater clock at certain times. So it does, like, it actually has strategic potential benefit if they're going to pay it in the future. That obviously is an if. So these are, I think what you just said is all spot on considerations for them. But like, I think we both agree that Turner is good enough that you keep him anyway and then figure that stuff out, not the other way around. And that's kind of how their offseason should plant itself in terms of chronological order.
Yeah, and if this injury didn't happen, the Pacers would for sure, like 100. Yeah. I would, maybe not 100%, but it's like 95% chance they would end up being taxpayers.
Agreed.
And in which case you're looking at like a 3-year window of them being in the clock, which being on that paying the tax, which coincidentally also coincides with what would be the end of Pascal Siakam's contract. Myles
almost
Turner,
like they planned this out pretty well.
Yeah. Our projection of how long Myles Turner's contract will be. Now it's all very much up in the air. So there's some value in delaying that repeater clock if they're not going to be contending for a championship this season.
Yeah. So Mathurin and McConnell, the bench vets, like, that's why we talk about them. Excuse me, Toppin and McConnell. I had Mathurin on the brain because I wanted to transition to him because he is, behind Turner, the second most interesting player to me of the Pacers offseason, because there is an argument to be made that is fairly smart that if next year is whatever you want to call it, whatever Boston and Milwaukee will call it, a gap year, a bridge year, whatever, young players become more valuable to the team that is in that situation. And Mathurin is young. On the other hand, he's extension eligible right now. And I'll ask you in a second, but I don't think there's any way that they would find common ground on an extension this summer, given what he probably thinks he could be. And you're paying for that as the Pacers, what he could be, not what he is. And what he is for the Pacers are pretty different right this second. It's kind of an odd reality because when a player's is extension eligible, but one doesn't make sense, like, you have to think about their future. So like, let's pretend Mathurin starts with Nembhard and Neesmith, two guys that he would be in theory competing for a starting spot with Haliburton back, and then is awesome this season. But if you're the Pacers, like, are you going to pay him for that season he just had when he'll probably go back to the bench 2 years from now? Like, is that a conundrum you want to run into, or are you then just dumping one of Neesmith or Nembhard in a year? Like, is that a good way to build your team? Maybe, if he's like awesome. So they're just kind of in a tricky spot with him where he's clearly good, he clearly has potential, but he's kind of tricky for their current salary structure and team building structure in a way that I really wonder how they're thinking about his future and how he fits on the team.
Yeah, we were discussing last week about the possibility of, well, maybe they kind of could use Mathurin. Maybe he ends up finding his role and finding a groove there. But to your point, what happens when Haliburton comes back? Is he going to come off the bench? I think we both agree that Mathurin, as a former 6th overall pick, he's probably looking for a lucrative contract and a role that the Pacers just might not be able to offer him in the long run. So if you're the Pacers, I'm sure both sides are going to be exploring trades right now, seeing what they can get for him. There could be some value in just keeping him, seeing if he plays better this regular season. Maybe he could increase his trade value. I doubt it will increase to the point where they can really get anything too significant, because keeping him into the season either means you've extended him or not extended him. And if you have extended him, trading him midseason is going to be really difficult.
Yep.
And then, you take a risk. And let's say you did extend him and he's not playing well. Well, now you have this contract that's not very attractive. Now, what if it's a negative value? You might have to pay something to get off it. I don't think it'll be that bad. So I would guess, number one, they're going to explore trade, see if there's something that makes sense for both sides, see if the Pacers can get something that makes it worthwhile, and if they can get Mathurin to a good situation for him where he can either extend now or at least have the opportunity to play himself to a bigger contract in free agency, or they'll keep him, not extend him, and just play things out, maybe sign and trade him next year.
That always works out so well. Let's see how Kuminga goes this summer and see if that influences. I think like very, very similar situation with Kuminga, like almost down to the pick number. It's just, this is how like the fit and growth cycle of these like clearly good, but maybe not perfect fit kind of players go. And then, or do you run into like a Jalen Green where he gets extended and everybody's excited, and then his season ends so terribly, and it's like, oh, that contract doesn't look so good. It's just with rookie scale extensions, it's so tricky if it's not obvious what their future is on a team. And you and I, like, maybe Ben Mathurin absolutely loves Indianapolis and wants to be with the Pacers for the rest of his career, but you and I mused, like, if he is trying to maximize his earnings, there's a theory that he would want to be on a different team, right? So I'm not saying he'll demand a trade or ask for one or anything, but like that would logically make sense to me. So I'll be fascinated.
It just seems like something I'm sure both sides already kind of like agree on. Yeah, I think it's for the best.
A subtle understanding. Yeah. Yes. None of these people get to free agency and are surprised. Like, this is always years in the making kind of things. So that's how the highlight level stuff of their summer and how this all fits together. But just a he is the most fascinating because I don't know player, even though Myles Turner is obviously the central figure. But like if they could trade Mathurin for a veteran making a little to a good amount less, and what some asset on top of that, or a different rookie scale contract player, maybe earlier in their deal or in the same cycle of their deal, but also makes less, maybe is a better fit. That would make good sense to me if that's out there. Obviously, that's very specific returns. So I haven't really, let's say, go ahead.
I think that is the best case scenario. I was going to say, if you can get a player on a rookie deal, maybe with 2 years left on a cheap contract, it doesn't have to be anyone spectacular, just someone who fits a need, has some potential, and maybe could get some seconds out of it. I think that'd be a very nice way for the Pacers to come out of that.
And like good chance to great chance that Mathurin looks better on a different team, which would make the Pacers look bad. But it's just like their reality of how they play and how fit works. Like I don't think that would be a bad thing, even though it hit that way. Everything else is smaller, I think, for their summer. I think you and I both expect, in fact, by the time this is out, it might already be announced, Tony Bradley's team option, his minimum is less than his team option. It's going to get declined. I don't even think there's any discussion with that. There are two ways. We'll see. They draft the kids. Go ahead.
Unless they have a trade and they need to
requires his salary. Yes, that's true. The biggest winner of draft night, Vasilije Micic. Let's go. Got a bunch of money out of that. Exactly.
Well, I think he's going to give most of that out. Give most of that back in a buyout, if not all of it.
You think he wants to be in Europe?
Yeah, he's going overseas. They're going to be all right. Hold on. You're not getting all. Hold your horses there, Mister.
Okay,
most likely he'll have to give back a lot of it.
Who's the guy the Raptors had with that scenario? Yeah, I guess it ends up
Vasenkov.
Yes, Vasenkov. That's right. I imagine that ends up fairly similar. Two ways: Talon Peter, Ray J. Dennis, and maybe they keep one of their other guys. There's nothing really interesting with that. Two more things. Sorry, Isaiah Jackson. You and I talked about this on yours as well. I do not. So one, I haven't talked about this in the show. I keep seeing people tweet Isaiah Jackson parentheses RFA. I would be pretty surprised if he went to restricted free agency because after an Achilles tear, I don't think the Pacers would offer him a qualifying offer at all. right? That would send him to restricted free agency. And he is good when he plays, but I would assume in his situation coming off an Achilles tear, he will not get an offer in free agency, even at his qualifying offer anywhere. And he would just take that immediately. And I don't think the Pacers want that in their salary reality. Yeah. But I think Isaiah Jackson should want to be on the Pacers next year because that's the only team that he would have bird rights on to make potentially more the year after next year, either with the Pacers or a sign and trade. This seems like it's headed for a 1 year minimum or 1 year, $3 million, something or another with the Pacers. Do you agree with all of that?
So the first point, $6.4 million qualifying.
No
offer.
Chance. Zero
if
chance.
That is, if the Pacers tendered that to him, I think he's going to pick that up faster than the Suns did, matching the max contract you guys gave to DeAndre Ayton.
Agreed.
Second part, yes, I think he still makes a lot of sense on the Pacers, and I would say bringing him back on maybe like a 1+1 with a player option on the second year, that could make some sense. But that's if there is a lot of interest for him at the minimum. That might be how the Pacers have to, make it a little more worthwhile. But I think the role's there for him. Like they, even with all the stopgap options that they had last year, Thomas Bryant, Tony Bradley, like Isaiah Jackson is still by far the better option of that group. And I mean, I'll let you finish. You know what my next thought's going to be? He would keep his bird rights.
Yeah,
yes, keep staying with Indiana. So
that's good for him.
Yeah. So it makes sense if he sticks around, finishes the year, has a strong season, then the Pacers could resign him for something above the minimum.
Yes, I agree with all of that. Because it makes sense for both parties, my thinking is that he'd be back, but it's not like, oh no, it's not like the end of the world if that goes sideways. Perhaps they keep, in that case, because he's coming off an Achilles tear, one of Tony Bradley or Thomas Bryant. You need a third center anyway, but none of them are getting more than the minimum. In fact, if I'm the Pacers, I am not letting either of them sign a deal that has any guaranteed money. If it has to be completely non-guaranteed minimum, or I am not even offering it, right? Because given their tax reality, they need all the flexibility they can get. That's 14 players if they have 3 centers and Cam Jones. Perhaps if they're trying to be as competitive as possible next year, I would think they could explore a vet minimum point guard. It's hard to say in their tax reality if they'll do that, if they can get a non-guarantee on that third center, which they should. I think they should probably explore a vet point guard, but is it really worth their money? I would say yes, but that I would understand if they opted out of doing.
Yeah, but also again, like who are the options at are you talking about free agent options?
Yes.
Like you're looking at
Monte Morris level players.
Well, that's a vet minimum addition.
That's what I mean.
You should. I think there's value in getting just one of those guys. I think they kind of have to bring in one guy. It might end up being the player might not end up being worth it. They might have to dump him later, but I think I think they're going to give it a try and try to bring somebody who can potentially be serviceable enough.
Corey Joseph, Spencer Dinwiddie,
former Pacer. Wait, no, did he play for the Pacers? Corey Joseph, or was he just traded?
He did. Yes.
Oh, he did play there. Yeah.
Can I give you what I would be thinking about idea as the Pacers for this player?
Mm-hmm.
Trey Mann. That kind of blends the youth, but also maybe good option. But I think more than just the Pacers would think that. But he had some flashes last year before that back injury. But someone who they know will be decent in case they don't want to play their rookies a ton of minutes.
Another guy I don't expect to get his qualifying offer. It's like $7 million. I think the Hornets. And especially after drafting Knipple. Is it Sean James? Is that how you Sion? I never looked up the pronunciation.
Yeah, I don't know.
They drafted 2 guys that could play guards. They already have a pretty deep guard rotation. Yeah. As nice as Trey Mann has been for the Hornets, I don't think they're going to give him that qualifying offer. So yeah, that'd be a nice opportunity for the Pacers to bring him in and give him, let him have the ball in his hand, see what he could do.
Jared Butler, Fultz, something in this mid to low 20s age range. That's everything besides the only extension eligible player, Aaron Nesmith, I think that 3 for 62-ish, 3 for 60-ish would be that extension. I'd offer it as the Pacers. I will say the same exact line I said about Andrew Nembhard last year. If I'm advising Aaron Nesmith, I am strongly advising him not to take that. That'll be pretty close to just the mid-level in 2 years anyway. You wave $60 million in a guy's face, you never know what they're going to say, but that would be my thinking on that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of 50-50, where on one hand, right now Aaron Nesmith has the aura of a finals run, and he was so important to getting them there, where if he's offered that, it might be the best opportunity for him to take it. No guarantee something like that is available to him next year. On the other hand, then what he could do is, especially because next year, like, he's probably not going to look as good without the Pacers having the highest level of success that they had. But then if you're him, you can make the bet that when Haliburton does come back on that last year of his deal, that Nesmith could have another strong season heading into free agency. He'd be extension eligible throughout the year, and he could add up to a fourth year from that same extension.
That makes sense.
So a lot to weigh. He did accept like what was considered a very team-friendly extension when he signed it with the Pacers 2 years ago.
Which is hilarious, because when that happened, people who hadn't watched the Pacers were like, why did they just give Aaron Nesmith $30 million? And everybody in Indiana was like, that is the best contract ever. How did the Pacers get to decide that?
I mean, that's a big reason that they're in the finals now. They had all this flexibility to have this roster that they put together. So I get the feeling if the Pacers offered them, probably lean a little bit more. If I had to guess, that he'll take it just based on his risk aversion from the previous extension.
Agreed. If we're going to close the bow on extensions, is there even an offer for Mathurin that makes sense to you? I can't even come up with a reason. Comp. Or
I think
4 for 70.
You've got
80. Is that too high?
That's probably too low for him, because.
But I would not offer more than that as the Pacers.
Exactly, because when you either get the max, you got the max tier of guys, the no-brainer maxes, and then you've got this second tier of guys. Like if you look at last year's crop, there's guys like Jalen Suggs, $30 million a year. Trey Murphy got $27 million a year. Those guys have done a lot more than Mathurin. They've been more productive, but I would guess that is what Mathurin's pointing at in negotiations. He might internally, he and his camp might feel that if gone to a different situation, he could, have a role that's worth that amount. If you're the Pacers, I think at this point, you want him back at something maybe closer, no bigger than like 18 million a year, maybe something like that, because then it's like it's kind of like what Daniel Gafford just got. It's like, okay, it's not quite starter level money. But if you are a starter, that's great. But we're probably going to have you as a reserve. So to be a high-end wing coming off the bench, this would be pretty good. This would work for us. I don't think he'd be interested in that.
I agree. I will be watching when it comes to Mathurin and just thinking about his future, not saying he should be comped to these players, but the 3 contracts I'll be watching this summer are Jonathan Kuminga, Cam Thomas, and I just had the 2025 draft up and I forget the third player. But there was a third player from that draft that I just was like, oh, yeah, that's a good one too. Quentin Grimes. How do those guys do in their situations? Those could be the 3 that would be interesting to me.
So Quentin Grimes, I'll start with him. I feel like he's in play. I think the Sixers want to bring him back, but now they have such a crowded backcourt. They drafted VJ Edgecombe. They have Maxey McCain. Re-signing Quentin Grimes would put him in the tax, which I don't think they're gonna be super opposed to, but it'll probably put him right against the second apron. I think if another team comes to the Sixers with an offer involving a nice future first round pick and a sign and trade for Grimes, I think the Sixers will seriously consider it. They didn't really give up anything to get Quentin Grimes, so to turn him to a first round pick would be a nice piece of business. Sorry, who were the other 2?
Grimes, Cam Thomas, and Kuminga, just because of their situations, not necessarily because of their talent.
So Cam Thomas, I would say the Nets just have all the leverage on that situation.
Yep.
He's probably looking at something kind of like what Sexton got, but as a percentage of the cap, which is like maybe 4 for 90 at the highest end. I'm guessing the Nets will want to do that full declining so they can have more flexibility in future years. And then as for Kuminga, that's tough because the Warriors, I went over their situation. That is going to be their best way, signing, trading Kuminga, maybe some of their other free agents, towards bringing better fitting veterans currently under contract. There's the whole BYC issue, which kind of complicates that. Warriors probably have to give up a couple, like a pick or two, to get a lot of other teams involved, because it's probably going to be like a 3-4 team process. I still think Kuminga, though, in the end, I feel like there's enough interest league wide where he'll probably get not quite what he was hoping or rumored to have declined. I guess he was offered $30 million a year and declined, but I think he's probably still going to get something in like the mid-20s.
I agree.
I think there will be some sticker shock when people see what the number is, because he didn't really produce that much for the Warriors. But I consider Kuminga in this class of players where Steve Kerr's system is probably the most complicated one in the league. A lot of players just don't fit there, but they work everywhere else. And I get the feeling he'll be a lot more productive elsewhere, in which case there is a world where he could be a productive, like 25-ish million a year guy.
Did we miss anything on the Pacers? Is there any other stupid little dorky thing? Oh, the 54th pick? I think we got it all.
I would guess he's going to have a two-way.
I agree.
That's pretty customary.
Every 54th pick since the invention of the two-way has gotten a two-way, actually. Yeah. Every single one.
Yeah, I suppose if, I'm always, ever since the Wolves did that, the way they structured the Karl Towns trade, I'm always thinking, oh, what if the team packages all their free agents in one big sign and trade? I'll say this. I think the Pacers have a sleeping, they have a sleeper good package for Giannis. If Giannis does become available and is interested in joining the Pacers, I think between Siakam, Mathurin, they have all their own picks in the next few years. I think if they wanted to be aggressive, I think they could make that type of offer for Giannis or another type of all-star that might be available, Jaylen Brown or whoever. Unlikely, but I just want to throw that out there.
I like that. I think that is part of their Stepien-related thinking of their incredibly shrewd trade with the Pelicans. Before Haliburton got hurt, I was like, why did the Pelicans do this? And now I really can't believe that the Pelicans did that.
I mean, now we got even more confirmation. Like, they're just like, they traded what could be a top 4 pick in next year's draft
with that pick
to the Hawks, so they can get with that 23 pick they got from the Pacers to get Derek Queen.
Crazy.
Yeah, just I had a low expectation for the Pelicans, and it's somehow like exactly at the level I kind of thought they'd be.
I agree. I think John Horst would rather die than trade Giannis in division, but hey, if it's on the table, the Pacers should certainly explore it, just like any majorly talented star. Yossi, you're the best. This was the best. This deep dive, I think, will be helpful for everybody. After Turner, I think their offseason becomes a lot more straightforward, but there's still a lot for them to consider given their new reality that struck them with 40 minutes to go in their season. I talked about a lot of them at the beginning, but where can people find you and the many things you do that I consider, again, the best public-facing salary cap resources on the internet?
You can you could see my salary cap information on capsheets.com. I'm updating them up, very quickly as soon as transactions happen.
And no trades while we did this. You're welcome. Yes.
Yeah, I gotta update the Lonzo Ball trade actually right after we hang up. You guys can see all my work on the Third Apron newsletter with deep salary cap analysis, and the Third Apron podcast, wherever you get podcasts. I'll be pretty active this week doing some live streams, just reacting to all the transactions that happen. And then make sure you're following me on Twitter, Blue Sky, my name, Yossi Gozlan. I am having some instant salary cap analysis on each transaction. Like up to the moment, best time of year to follow me, put me on notifications.
100% agree. Join me in that club, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow talking presumably about other Pacers free agency topics, but something could happen at any time. So I will not promise any sort of specific topic on any day going forward until the offseason is more settled. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. See you very soon.